Alright, how does that look to everybody? I'll turn off, BizHawk. Alright, I just want to do a sound check. How loud is my voice compared to the audio? Let me know if I need to, do I need to change the volume of the video? Or is it good enough? My voice is higher. By a considerable margin? You think it's good? Okay. If I need to make it louder, just let me know. Okay. Alright, let me move this stuff. Alright, everybody. So, here's my, Alright, so here's my world record run for normal 80% of 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 11 seconds. This run was by far one of the greatest runs that'll probably happen for this game. It is possible to be beaten, but not by a whole lot, and it will require, if not the same, better luck. So, first things first is the first skip of the run, is Ron skip. Also, you'll notice that I actually had to... Yes, like, no, I will inform everybody about this. So, anyway, the first thing you'll notice is I pick up the Morgan Le Fay deck. The Morgan Le Fay deck is the most crucial part, honestly, of the whole run, because otherwise you cannot beat the final boss, which is the Basilisk. The first thing that I do after I get past the initial cutscene to get to the burrow, I do a skip of Ron. There are 4 pixels in which that you can get past Ron. It's very specific. I am the only person that I think I'm the only runner of this game anymore that actually does the normal setup that I use to actually find the skip. Because usually you can just walk diagonally and adjust your movement from there. I just figure out where I need to stand and walk up. It saves about 1.5 seconds to actually just go for it and readjust as you go along. When I get in the burrow, the first thing I do is I go grab I grab 2 pepper potions, and I talk to Ron to go through the night and into the morning, where we will end up helping Ron denome the garden. Now, a lot to note about this game. Between my last PB, which was a 1 hour, 15 minute, and 37 second run in game time, the amount of effort I put into learning about the run skyrocketed. Like, I put so much effort into actually learning RNG seeds and outcomes of certain attacks, movements, and being able to somewhat predict some fights. And the reason why this is important, you'll soon realize when we get to the first fight of the game, which will be in Gringotts. But for now, I'll get to that when we get there. The gnome minigames are pretty boring, honestly. Casually, you just go for the highest score you can, picking up the gnomes, and in this one you try to throw it as far as possible. You can't make the first minigame any faster because it's on a timer of 30 seconds. This one can be significantly reduced in time. The main issue with this is Ron, and also you throwing the gnome not pixel perfect into the wall. There's like well, it's not pixel perfect, but there's 3 pixels in which you can actually go through the fence. When you throw it, if you throw it at a high enough speed, it'll just go straight through the fence. gone through 2 gnomes way over the fence, and they got 1 gnome through the fence, which is really slow, but manageable for later on. Next, we're just going to do the whole thing where we end up going into Nocturne Alley. But the difference here is, you know, like in the movies, and I think it's the same way in the book, it's been a little while. Instead of saying diagonally, like he does in those 2, we actually cough while we're saying Diagon Alley, which ends up making us go to Nocturne Alley. There's not really a ton to say here. Once we get out of this cutscene, we'll leave this building and go to the one next door to the left to pick up a Revive Potion. Revive Potions are exceedingly important, but particularly for this fight only, because you'll see when I get to the boss fight in Gringotts that is 100% necessary to get. So we pick up the Revive Potion and go. You'll notice here that I pause just before this trigger. I missed the setup for this pause by about 6-ish pixels, but what it gives you is Haggard Skip. Haggard Skip is skipping this Haggard cutscene, pausing on the trigger that would cause him to spawn. It saves about 6 to 9 seconds, I think, depending on your mashing, or maybe it's 8 to 9. I don't remember the exact amount of time off the top of my head, but regardless. So now we're going in the Gringotts, and I will be getting a sickle pickup as soon as I walk in. 152 sickles is the medium range, which is actually pretty good. It'll help us in the end game, or normally would help us in the end game. I actually do something else. This part of the run is pretty interesting. So what we do here is we'll pick up this antidote right here we'll need for later, and as we traverse through here we will end up picking another item up, which is the Wiggenweld Grand Potion. So here's the first fight of the run. This is the Footman fight. Traditionally one of the hardest fights to start off the run. And you'll see here that I use enemy attacks to get through stuff. So you see here that Ron gets a double crit for 23 damage. This actually proves during the run the seed that I got for this is known as D4, which is actually the fastest possible RNG seed that you can get for this fight. I can tell because he gets a 3rd crit to finish off the fight. If he doesn't get that crit, the fight doesn't end. I'm able to tell what the RNG seed is for that fight in specificness specifically because of how it starts off. This is the only RNG seed where Ron gets hit for 37 and criticals for 23. The only one. So just by knowing the rest of the inputs, I'm able to just do that fight pretty much as quickly as possible. So to explain more about RNG seeds, there are 2 fast RNG seeds for this fight in particular, and how RNG works is there's 256 for this game for each fight. This fight in particular has 2 really good ones, and throughout these 256 RNG seeds there are 115 that are bad, and 145 that are bad, and when I say bad, I mean that you do not get past the first turn because somebody dies. And the next 111, you're able to get out the first turn with it, but you will die in the second turn, and the Revive Potion will not save you throughout the whole fight, no matter what you do, for the most part. Like I said, there are 2 really fast seeds, and there are 4 good seeds. past those two. So there's only 6 seeds that will really get you through that fight exceedingly quickly without doing slower strats, which is constantly doing EAS and having Ron constantly cast and healing his magic, which is what the alternative is if you don't know the RNG seeds. I pretty much am able to dissect most of the run while I'm doing it. It's not really the pleb way, Legna. It's more of, if you don't understand the RNG values, then you have to do it a slow way to make it as quickly as normally possible. It took me forever to actually get the RNG seeds to properly work. I spent the 2 fights that I spent the most amount of time dissecting are the Footman fight, because it's the very first fight of the game, and you have to get past that one, of course, to continue the run. And it's also the earliest fight in the game, so it's pretty simple in general. And the other one I had to dissect was the Basilisk fight, which is the final fight in the game, which you will see is very, very interesting when I get there. For those that have seen it, you will understand exactly how exceedingly crazy it is, and for those who haven't seen it, you'll also see how exceedingly crazy it is, but don't 100% understand what I'm doing. Also, you'll see here, normally I play this minigame, but the day that I did this, it was really, really cold outside, so I'm sitting there trying to make my hands as warm as possible. So I just kind of sit in place while I warm up my hands, which is part of the reason why you'll see me having somewhat slower menus than I normally do. But coming up, I'll know the exact RNG for the next fight afterwards as well. Not that it really changes a whole lot, because you're just casting the same spells over and over again. So basically, so long as you don't have a backfire and don't miss, criticals make the fight faster, true, but it's basically you're just casting Vermilius to get through the fight. So basically, as long as you constantly do damage, you'll get through the fight no matter what. But there is an important thing about the Whomping Willow fight that I will explain when we get to that fight. It actually is a seed that is 1 out of 256 probability to hit. I get 2 back-to-back 1 in 256 fights, which is absolutely insane. Very unlikely, 1 in 65,536 to be exact. I don't even know the percentage odds of that. It's crazy, crazy, crazy low. So here we go. We get told by Ron, hey, my wand's broken. And believe me, it is the worst thing to deal with in a non-ES run, and probably not a very fun thing to deal with casually. So you'll see here that Ron crits turn 1, which is fantastic. Obviously, it saves a turn by him critting. In turn 2 he crits, which again saves another turn. The only way this fight could have been done even faster than this is if Harry had gotten a crit. But this fight went as fast as it could go with the circumstances we had it with. So the good thing about this RNG seed, and this RNG seed is the RNG value of F2. What this RNG seed does for us is Ron gets 2 crits in the fight, totaling 45 damage, which is almost half of the Whomping Willow health. And he also dies. Now, for a normal run, that doesn't really matter too much. It saves very little time for him dying. All it does is him not level up, which saves a menu after the fight's over. But it's really not that huge of a deal. But I'm going to explain crits, because you'll notice that Harry doesn't get crits very often, but Ron gets them quite frequently. So the reason why Ron will get crits more frequently than Ron or Hermione or any other character in the game is because Ron's crits are static. And when I say static, I mean that no matter the situation, if you hit the same RNG value every single time, his crits will always land. As long as, of course, but the same RNG value will give you the same result for Ron. 100% of the time. Has been tested numerous times by me and through a task that I created, which I will also link in the description of when I export this to YouTube. But Ron, Harry, Hermione, any other creature you fight, their crits are not static. It actually is frame dependent on which you get them, which is very annoying because you can't manipulate Harry or Hermione criticals unless you know about how long you have to wait. When we get in the castle, the first thing we do, after we go through all the dialogue, is we go to the 7th floor, we go into the shop, and we buy 2 items and 2 potions. We buy the skull cap, the oven mitts, and 2 Wiggenweld potions. Normally we would buy pepper up potions if we had used up any while we were in Gringotts, but we didn't use any, so I didn't have to buy any more. We buy the Wiggenweld potions. Wiggenweld potions give you 30 health, and they'll be used to heal me between fights. The skull cap is used for spell damage and some defense, but the spell power is more important. It gives you, I think, 8 spell power, but like 4 defense, and the oven mitts give you 6 defense. The only downside to these items is that it gives you negative agility, which makes you slower, and normally that's a bad thing, but it actually helps out significantly in certain fights, because Harry's being slower, so you actually can do certain things to help things go along a lot smoother. So when we go to Herbology, we'll take the shortcut from the 6th floor to the dungeon, so we don't have to walk the other 5 floors down to the foyer, the Grand Hall, and we'll pick a pepper up potion when we get outside. And we'll have 3 in total at this point when we go into here. I do not remember all the RNG seeds I hit for these fights, but one thing I can tell you is that even though you have fights that are disjointed, and when I say disjointed I mean they're not within the same realm or like same set of RNG seeds, they can still have very similar outcomes. Like I think for this one, this is D7, which means I only take 2 hits of damage that are of 20 health going in through this fight. I don't remember what the RNG seed is for the next fight, but you'll notice I only heal 1 time. I don't actually heal back up to full. I'm going a lot riskier in this run than I probably should have, but I meant to use a Wiggenweld Grand Potion, but instead I used my Wiggenweld Potion, and I kind of meant to use the Wiggenweld Grand, which is why I didn't try to heal again, because I thought I'd press it down going into it, you'll see here, but I didn't. So I ended up going a lot riskier anyway, kind of by accident, but it worked out, as you'll see here. Because one of the RNG seeds that couldn't get this fight is D4. But D4 I can't hit if my previous RNG value was D7. I don't mean this to commentary to be talking about RNG seeds, but it actually is very crucial if I know them or about what they are. Or this one's D7, first one's D4, my bad. So a disjointed one means that normally this is like a D7, but I think like an F8 or 0A can actually hit that same exact seed. So the good thing is we level up after Mandrake 2, which means that we don't have to heal before Turtle. And all we do here is cast Verdimillious and try to get through the fight as fast as possible, and hopefully we don't have to actually have to use either a health potion or the pepper up potion. And we level up again because of our experience. So this fight right here, what we're trying to do is actually take damage. We want to take as much damage as possible through this fight, and it'll be important for the next fight coming up. All we're trying to do is just take damage and try to kill this as fast as possible. And that crit, if it... all these things have 80 health, so we're trying to manage that properly. So that would have had to have done 43 damage, which it couldn't have done. Because Harry's max normal range is 19, and so the highest crit he can get is 38, because it can do up to double damage of the max range. So 38 was the most it could have done. So all we're going to do is turn the Mandrakes and get Incendio. The spell will only be used for one fight. Only one. And I'll explain to you why Harry having such low health is important in the next fight, because that's also going to be very important for fights later on. So now we're going to go to Lockhart's class, which is just doing a minigame. It's a 35-second minigame that I actually don't even do. I don't even participate in. I just kind of sit there. Because you also have the ability to get what's called sound glitch, and it's a very annoying thing to have happen, so I try not to do it. Also, something I learned about this minigame is it introduces a ton of lag if you try to catch these pixies, which in a normal, playthrough or, anything else really, like trying to get high scores for minigames, doesn't really matter. But that lag actually matters a ton in a speedrun, because it freezes an RNG value so heavily that if you know exactly what you're doing, you're kind of going to mess stuff up, unless you know exactly when to use them. But what sound glitch is if you start powering up your wand at the last set, the last possible moment of the minigame, then you'll get the sound of the wand constantly charging up during the minigame playing in the background until you pick up an item or do another action that changes the music. Now, getting it in this run wouldn't be that big of a deal, because it would go away really quickly. Because I go into the hospital wing and I will pick up an item in here after talking to Katie to open a side quest. Which I guess is a spell that we, once again, will only use for one fight. Now you can do that fight that'll be useful for that spell without it, but it's a lot riskier. So you'll see this, what I do when I have encounters in front of me, I pause, but just before I hit them, is pause actually moves the encounters away from you, which is very important in this run, because you don't want to hit any encounters other than the ones that you're going into intentionally. Because of course, if you hit stuff you don't need to do, or don't do things you need to do, then you lose time. In this run, I don't think I hit a single random encounter. I do not recall. But of course, having to sidestep them or pause loses a little bit of time. However, pausing does not affect your in-game time, because by pausing the game, it pauses the in-game time. So when I go in the menus and stuff, the in-game timer doesn't progress. But you don't want to sit in them too long, because it's just kind of messed up. However, sidestepping out of the way does waste time because you're still in the overworld. But you'll see quite a few times that I will sidestep them instead of using the pause method, just because I don't have to step too far out of the way to miss them. I also should have explained some things about enemies. Like, for instance, the Footman has 100 health and is weak to Verdimillious at the low levels. Because, you could get certain things that happen and have, like Flipendo be the strongest, or Expelliarmus if you have the spell. But it's not really worth it. Besides, it would actually require a New Game Plus method as well. So, for low levels, Verdimillious is the way to go. Anyway, I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. This fight, the reason why we want Harry at low health, you'll see in just a minute, we actually want him to die here. And the reason why this is important is because the next fight we need to have him as at low of health as possible. And it's just faster that way. That critical actually, if it had happened the turn before, would have saved a turn. Unfortunately, But the reason why we don't want Harry to live is because he doesn't level up, which means the next fight he gets into he'll be at 1 health, regardless of what happens. Yeah, I know I'm tripping over words while I talk about this game, but there's so much to think about and talk about. Anyway, so the next boss fight that was after Footman was Whomping Willow, all we're doing is just constantly casting Vermilius. That's all you do. You're just hoping to kill it as quickly as possible. Same thing in Herbology, you do that for all the mandrakes, and for the turtle you use Verdimillious. Those all have 80 health. Whomping Willow has 105, as I stated previously. And the Venomous Tenacular, the plant that we fought in the garden, has 180 and is weak to Incendio, extremely weak to Incendio, and is weak to Vermilius. You also see that we healed Hermione's magic instead of having Harry attack again. It was just the best thing to do, because Hermione does more damage than Harry does at the level that they're at, and it's just trying to... I was just hoping that Harry would die. And And if Harry died that turn and Hermione hadn't had her magic healed, then she had a really high probability of not killing the thing by herself, because Vermilius does like a third of the damage that Incendio does at their Unos against Venomous Tentacular. When we go into the school, you'll notice I position myself for the McGonagall cutscene. It's to save a little bit of time of Harry walking during the cutscene. But if you position yourself too well, you can actually walk straight through that cutscene, just like I did in the burrow to get past Ron. And unfortunately, it doesn't help you at all. Because unfortunately in this game, you can't sequence break. You can't do things out of order. You have to follow the set, the set path for the game. Because if you could just skip McGonagall, then you would go to Lockhart and continue on. But in order to be able to go to Lockhart's detention, you have to go through that cutscene and be told you go into detention. So when we get into Lockhart's office, you'll notice that I walk around him and try to walk down left, and so that I can position myself as close to the table as possible so Harry walks less during the cutscene. Because Harry's normal walking animation is faster than his walking animation during the cutscene by, I think, like 25% or 15%, something like that. And it's just way faster to do it that way. And then we do Nick Skip the next day. I know I'm way behind. But we do Nick Skip, which works exactly the same way as Burrow Skip, but it's actually way more precise. There is no room for error. You'll see me wait and barely move to the right. And then I walk straight down. There is literally no room for error at all. It's just really frustrating. I tried a lot of different ways to try to walk around that trigger, but there is pretty much no way to do it. So hey Bargain, how you doing? Unfortunately, we're able to skip that because it doesn't break the sequence in any way, shape, or form. The sequence we're supposed to do is just go to Quidditch, and his cutscene's basically just a side note where he just tells you to go to the Death Day party for him. Then you go into Quidditch. You just do Quidditch as fast as possible, and then you go to the Death Day party. And then you have to go do bowling, which is the most nonsensical minigame in this whole game. Like, what's the point of it? It's so annoying. It's so unpredictable. And by far one of the worst minigames to me in the game. So the goal here is to get as many strikes as possible. Now that may seem weird because whenever Harry gets a strike, he does an extra animation, just the same thing as when he gets a gutter ball. But having to throw one less ball overrides is way faster than having that animation. I think in this run I only get 3 strikes. The most I've ever gotten in a run, even though it didn't finish, was 8. The most I've gotten in a finished run is 5. And then when you go into the 10th frame, you don't even want to attempt to get a strike because then you have to throw 2 extra throws, and if you get a spare, you have to throw an extra throw. It is actually possible to not hit a pin at all, but not get a gutter ball. It is a very, very, very minor set of pixels to actually have that happen. So when we leave the Death Day party, we have the snake cutscene where we have to turn around and talk to Ron and Hermione pretty much every certain amount of steps. There is a way to skip this, but it is a very difficult trick, an extremely difficult trick. Because if you don't get it, you lock the game and you can't do anything. You have to step on the trigger, which is like an arc. So it's basically whatever you're positioned in, you have to be at a very specific spot. And you pause on the trigger, and you can wait a second before you do it. But when you get into it, you have to go into the equipment menu by pressing A, press B, and immediately press start to leave the menu. And if you do that, you don't get any of the snake dialogue. The only issue is that you can hit encounters, which lose time, obviously. Because during the snake cutscene, if you just hit the trigger, you can't have any encounters spawn. But if you do that, encounters can. Because when the snake dialogue does pop up, you cannot get encounters to spawn at all. The game just cuts it off. But if you don't ever hit it, the game is never set to say, hey, you can't have encounters spawn. If you get that trick at the fastest possible time, it saves you 14 seconds. If you do it as quickly as possible, which is basically you go straight into and just go on and do it as quickly, frame perfectly as possible. There's a small amount of buffer for it, but if you don't hit it correctly, you soft lock the game, and you'll have to restart your run. I'm kind of glad I didn't really try to go for it. I kind of half-assed it. But I didn't want to lose such a good run to something so arbitrary. I was on really good pace, and I didn't really want to lose the run right there. Though you'll notice that I really end up not caring at all and just go completely crazy. So another one of the things that you try to do in this run is optimize your movement as well as possible. Which sounds simple enough, but it's actually really difficult since this is a game where you can move diagonally. When we go into History of Magic, we're asked to go to the library to pick up a book, Hogwarts of History. When we come back to class, we go pick up a card that we'll need for the end of the game. It's for the card combo that I picked up in the alleyway of Diagon Alley, which is the reason why we need the Morgan Le Fay deck, because if we don't get the if we get the Merlin deck instead of the Morgan Le Fay deck, that card combo that we get in the alleyway is not the same, so we don't actually get, and also the cards that are required for it, you can't get with the Merlin deck either. You can still get the card combo in the Merlin deck, it's in a completely different area, but you can't get the cards required for it. They're Morgan Le Fay deck exclusive cards. That was card number 47. It's the second card we have. You need cards 39, 47, and 62. We already have 62 from picking the Morgan Le Fay deck. So, it's a good start. You don't have to worry about having to get other ones. You only have to get 2 of the 3. The next thing we have to do is go talk to Myrtle. You'll see I position myself a very specific way going into that cutscene. It's to save time and movement, and also saves time for Hermione to walk back into the party. Because the closer that people are to their certain positions, it goes a lot faster. And the reason why I say movement needs to be as optimal as possible is because, well, I made a movement error going back to try to go to Myrtle. You'll see that I tried to go up as if I was trying to go down to the Grand Hall when I need to go to the second floor. So we go talk to Hagrid, and he's like, well, you tell them a joke or you grab them a flower. Well, the flower we have to get is in McGonagall's office, and when we go into McGonagall's office, we actually pick up another antidote, which we will need later. And then we pick up the lily, and we go hand it to Myrtle, and she'll teach us the spell that is the most important in the run, Mucus ad nauseam. That is the thing that makes EAS so broken. And the next thing that we'll do is we'll go back to the common room, which, contrary to popular belief, is actually faster to be gotten to by going to the first floor, going to the fourth floor through a shortcut, and then walking up to the seventh, as opposed to going to the dungeon and going up to the sixth floor to get to the common room. It's 5.5 seconds faster than what I used to do many a time ago. So we go to the common room, then we'll be like, we need to get a book from the library, but it requires us going to the restricted section. So we go talk to Lockhart to get a piece of paper signed to go to the restricted section to get the book to make the potion for the Polyjuice potion. And then we'll go to Quidditch. Where here it is faster just to walk straight down to the third floor. Which once again, for some reason, I did not understand to do when I did runs way before route changes. So when EAS was found for HP2, which I only tried to test after speedrunning HP1 for a while, it completely opened the possibilities for crazy things to start happening in this game. Because before Enemy Attack Skip was found, the world record for this game was 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 40 seconds, which is a run I'm still super proud of to this day, despite it not being world record anymore. Because it allows you to save so much time against 2 of the last 3 fights in the run. And then progressively the route just got harder and harder and harder. By doing less and less and less. But the enemy attack skip was a strategy adopted from HP1, because HP1 is used all the time. It was used in any percent all the time because it was a major requirement to beat the game. So I just adopted the practice for HP2 after doing tons of testing to get it to work. And when I found it, I literally just went absolutely ballistic about it. I was like, well, this is going to change the whole scheme of the run. In my first run back to HP2, I went from 140, 140 to 135, 35, and I'm like, this run can be so much quicker. And I was like, we're just not going to do some things. I didn't get Verdimillious Duo. So one of the things that I do for this in specific, I actually wait to be hit by the bludger. The reason why we need to get hit by the bludger, I mean, we technically don't have to, but that dialogue can override the dialogue of Harry screaming, going up in the air after catching the snitch. And if you get that override, then you get soft locked in the minigame and can't continue. So we just leave that to crazier people to do. It saves roughly a second and a half to not go for it optimally if you don't get hit at all. But digressing back to enemy attack skip. So I decided we're not going to go get Verdimillious Duo because we used to get that all the time. After getting the time down to 1:29:47, which has a legendary pop-off. If you go watch that. That run is broken up into 2 parts because Twitch exporting is annoying. But it has one of the most spectacular pop-offs of my my speedrunning career. If you want to go watch that run. And then the next week after saying I'm done speedrunning this game for a while, I was like, we're not gonna do stuff we're not gonna do something else anymore. Which I was like, because I did Verdimillious Duo strats all the way until getting to 1:29:47. And then the next week I was like, we're not gonna get that anymore. And I only got Vermilious Duo. And then we kept doing that. We kept grinding that down. And I got to my 1:24:04, which is another crazy pop-off because it was gotten during a defecta of all types of runs. A defecta was me doing HP1 and HP2 back-to-back. But the 1:24:04 was so unexpected to be gotten during a defecta of all things. And then about a year later, I beat that by 2 minutes. To get a 1:22:02. Oh, and this section has my favorite movement. Coming up right here. So just, look at this movement. Boom. And that defective time is still horrible. I might go improve that. I didn't even try to predict that enemy spawn. I'm just like, we're gonna go diagonally up here, because this just feels, I just need to do it now. I either have to do it now or do it later. My favorite movement of the entire run's like, what the hell? So after we do all of that, we go to Potions class, which also has my favorite dialogue in it, which you won't see because I go through the dialogue so quickly. But we have to go into the storeroom to pick up 2 items for the Polyjuice potion. But Snape gives my favorite dialogue of this entire game right here. He says, I can't say that you're the one that caused all the problems in class today, but I suspect that you did. And it's like, dude, we are the only 3 people in this classroom with you. How on earth can you say that you suspect that it's us but can't prove it? I mean, what did you think? Some random person came in the room and started blowing up fireworks where we were sitting? That doesn't even make sense to me, but regardless. So the next thing we do is we get to the dueling club and we have to challenge Draco. And this is the reason why we died against Stenacular. Because Harry has 1 health going to this fight, so all we have to do is have him cast a spell and actually hit us. Because the goal is just to die. Which we do. That's all we needed to do for that fight, because it doesn't matter if you win or lose, you get the same outcome. So, yes, Legna, I know. So let me explain these splits, I guess, since the former world record holder is sitting here and commenting about it. I have splits to compare against the world record at the time, just to see how far ahead I am. You'll see how close my time is to his, and you'll actually see how far ahead as you're watching the run previously without watching all the times going off. You'll actually see that I'm ahead of him for a lot of the run, and then at the end, I'm just behind him for random reasons. And it's also really funny, you watch my PB chance at the bottom just slowly go up. Like, I started with like a 0.02% chance or something dumb like that, and now I'm at 40.76. Not that that's important or anything, but I just thought it was humorous. So, instead of, when it comes to this, dealing with the snake, instead of just having Justin run off, we actually do a chase with him, and then we see that he gets petrified. Instead of, waiting to see him be petrified normally like they do in the book or movie. Peeves goes ballistic, and McGonagall's like, "This is out of my hands, you should go talk to Professor Dumbledore." Or you tell Dumbledore nothing is wrong after seeing Fawkes explode in the flames. Then you just leave, and it jumps like a month or so ahead in time. And so now we have to go get hair from Crabbe and Goyle to be able to change into them. And in order to do this, we have to lose in a wizard. Well, we have to either beat them or lose to them in a wizard fight. Well, as you can probably assume, with being such low level and no items to even potentially beat them, we're gonna lose to them on purpose. Though, previously we actually did fight them and beat them. The funny thing is about this cutscene with them is actually you can walk in between them and go into the dungeon. It's a super narrow one, like it's even more narrow of a space than most other cutscenes you skip. I actually did it by accident in our run. So here all we do is we run so that they can kill us. We get a pretty good fight actually. I think it's I say 2.5 turn fight, because it takes 5 casts for them to kill us, so it's not technically a full 3. If that Incendio lands, it kills us. But it didn't. So a 2.5 turn fight. And unfortunately it's not faster to hit an encounter to try to lose as much health as possible before going into that fight. The only way that fight can be, the fastest that fight can go is double Expelliarmus cast into a critical for a 1-turn fight, which is a near impossible outcome. Like, you think that me getting back-to-back 1 in 256 odds is crazy. It's actually a lot harder to do that because you have to manipulate them to get a critical on the same exact frame. So So now we use the Polyjuice Potion to turn into him. Hermione gets turned into a cat, so she doesn't go with us, and we go down to the dungeon. Just something that is disappointing is because of the larger hitbox. Well, there are some advantages. You can actually get into doors at a slightly different angle that you couldn't with Harry. But the thing that sucks is because they have such a big hitbox, you actually cannot skip this cutscene. It is impossible. If, and even pausing on the trigger for it doesn't actually skip it either. If you had Harry's hitbox, which has been tested, by skipping to that with cheats and using Harry and Ron instead of Crabbe and Goyle hitboxes, you can narrowly skip it just like you can actually getting into the cutscene when you face Crabbe and Goyle. That's how small of a hitbox it is. But because you have an extended hitbox, you can't get past it. So we just learned that Draco isn't the heir of Slytherin. We don't know who is. And then we go back up and the Polyjuice Potion goes away. I would like to note, it doesn't say it in this game, but it does say in the book, and I'm pretty sure it says in the book, and I think it says it in the movie as well, that you only have an hour with it, and we do that whole cutscene and stuff in like 3 or 4 minutes. So in this game, 3 to 4 minutes lasts an hour. There's not a whole lot that goes on between here and Aragog. There's just one thing I do differently compared to my previous run, which I'll explain when I get there. But the evolution of this category is quite crazy, honestly. I did my first ever run of this game almost 6 years ago now. It's been 5 years and 9 months since I did my first ever run of this game. And the time, because we use in-game time, was 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 16 seconds. And the strategy for that was get Vermilius Duo and Vermilius Duo in Diagon Alley. Then we would grind in Dueling Club to get to level 21. And the reason why 21 was so important was because we were able to take 3 attacks from Aragog. Because no matter what level you are, or how much defense you have, Aragog always does 80 damage to you. Without fail. So... we talk to this dude, and it initiates the second part of the side quest with Katie, which will allow us to get the book that she wants, so she can read it. Hello, Captain. How are you doing? Just commentating a world record, the world record run for any percent. And then we go into the diary. And that's really all that happens between here and Aragog, other than, you know, the normal stuff. If you've watched the movie or read the book, you know, you deal with Hagrid being sent to Azkaban, even though that's not said in here, and Dumbledore being suspended or sacked or whatever it is. But then my second run of this game that finished, the endgame time was 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 48 seconds. It's because I went down to level 13 before Aragog is at level 21. That puts it to where you can take 2 attacks before you die against Aragog. And as you can tell by the amount of time saved, it was significant. The next run I finished using the same exact strategies. I saved 9 minutes, and I'm not quite sure how I did it, but after 6 months of hiatus from running the game, I got down to a 148.01. My next run I finished was a 146.50 and a 146.46. These are all using the same strategies. And then 144.46. And eventually the 140.140 that I got before EAS became the standard for the run. After EAS was found, 135.35 was the first run with enemy attack skip. Then as my time and menuing and everything else got better, it went down to a 133.23, then a 132.28, then a 132.10, 130.50, down to an eventual 129.47, where we eventually abandoned getting Verdimillious Duo, and just getting Vermilius Duo, which, like I said, the 129.47 has one of my most legendary pop-offs when it comes to my speedrunning. And the one thing to note here is the one thing I didn't do is I didn't go into into the shop to get Wiggle Grand Potions. Normally we do. But I went a lot of risks in this run, even though it wasn't actually necessary at all, being ahead by almost 2 minutes at this point. And then after only going to get Vermilius Duo, I went from a 129.47 to a 126 something, I forget what that time was, down to a 155.38 to my 124.04 that I got during a Defector run. Which is why that run was so crazy. Now I got to a 122.02 a year later on a very, very late night stream without Mike that I don't know if anybody actually saw at the time when it was live. And I left it at 122.02 for a long time. And then eventually someone dethroned me and got a 120.12, I'm pretty sure. And that made me go, wow, somebody beat my time, I have to see what they did. And all they did was just level up to level 3 in Diagon Alley and not get Vermilius Duo. And I was like, but why? Why would you put yourself through that? But, alas, I persevered and was like, you know what? We'll go beat that time. And eventually I got my run down to a 118.40. And the man that dethroned me, that gave me the push to do this run, his name is TootsLaFiber7, who I will link in the description of this YouTube export. I recommend giving him a follow on Twitch. He does a lot of other games. And I stopped at 118.40 for a while. I was actually like, wow, I actually saved an hour over my initial run. And then a man named Jelmir came into the fray and was like, we should do it to where we don't even level up in Diagon Alley. We just go beat Footman, beat Whomping Willow, buy some equipment, and go. And so that's what we did. So the time went from 118.40 to like a 117 something, beating me again. eventually we got down to a 1:15:21 by Legna, who is in the chat currently, the former world record before this run was done. And I was sitting pretty happy at my 118, and I was like, you know what, we're going to come back to this game after I spent some time playing other games. And I just wanted to better my run. I just wanted to get, a 116, and all that. And eventually I got down to a 137. And I just want to get world record. But to explain this Aragog fight, this is why EAS is so big, and why Mucus Ad Nauseam is so crazy good. So what we do here is we have to get it to where these boys both survive, and Ron casts Mucus Ad Nauseam. If Ron backfires, the run is dead, unless he attacks, unless nobody else has neither of these two have taken damage before this fight, and he attacks Harry. And then we just EAS chain, which all we do is we try to flee from the fight, and we press A or B, or also, as I do it, ABA, and then constant flow until Aragog dies. Aragog has 400 health, so it takes 27 turns of EAS to kill him. And of course, because we're level 8 going into this fight, we level up to level, I think, 12 or 13 after the fight's over, because he gets the 650. And then the next fight is Lockhart, which, when runs were done before enemy attack skip, these last 3 were so difficult, and they still all are, but as long as you don't die against Aragog, the fight's over, as long as you can cast. Lockhart, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Completely different story. And you'll see why in just a minute. Now, you won't understand it, because I complete the chain, but I will tell you that it can lose you runs. It can lose you runs. After we beat Aragog, we try to go see Myrtle. And we get stopped by McGonagall, which I don't understand why we don't get in huge trouble for leaving the common room to go see Hermione, but we don't. And as you saw earlier, we talked to Ginny on the way to Aragog and got a book. And you'll see Katie's not sitting there in the bed, but we pause and unpause and she magically appears, and we can give her the book that we got for her. And get Petrificus Totalis, which is a spell that we use literally for only this fight. If we don't get the spell, it saves 15 seconds, but it makes this fight a lot more risky. This fight isn't risky at all if you get the poison chain, but it's incredibly unbearable otherwise. So going into this fight, we use Ratnip and then cast Mucus Ad Nauseam against him. Now you'll notice that he is still moving after you hit him with Mucus Ad Nauseam, but Ratnip completely makes him not move at all for the whole turn. And then we use Petrificus Totalis, and then Poison Chain. Now, after the first turn of Petrificus Totalis, he doesn't move at all. So you just only have to deal with doing 2. But then you have to do 3. And the reason why Lockhart's is so much more devastating than Aragog's is because you can't immediately redo the chain, because Lockhart moves last. Aragog moves first, so you can reset the chain if you accidentally drop it. If you drop it here, you have a problem. a major problem. Lockhart has 500 health and gives you 500 experience. So it takes you, I think, 5 extra... No, it takes you 31 turns because you do less poison chaining since you hit him for 20 damage with since you hit him for 20 damage with Ratnip, and you get one free turn of 15 damage, it's 31 turns of EAS. So, and if you drop the chain, the run's over. It's practically over. And then we just go into the chamber. We have the Lockhart backfire scene, and we just go from there. I've talked a lot about previous runs. I've talked about RNG values in the beginning of the run, and I will once again tell you about RNG value for this fight coming up when we get into it. Like I said, first we have to go through the Lockhart cutscene. It is actually possible to skip this cutscene if you die before it, but obviously it's a lot slower to have that happen. A lot slower. Because when you die, for some reason, it places Harry, it places him past that cutscene, so you're able to go with Ron and Lockhart to the final fight. So it's really interesting, honestly. It actually makes the fight a lot cooler when you think about it. But we grab card number 39 from that torch, and that's the last encounter that could spawn the entire run. After that encounter spawned, after I did the pause buffer, no more encounters could spawn. And here we are in the final chamber of the Chamber of Secrets. We talk to Tom Riddle, and the Basilisk fight will start. Now, for the Basilisk fight, out of the 256 values you can get for this fight, 9 of them put you in a position of which I will do. But for the exact inputs I will be doing, there were only 4. There is a 1 in 64 chance of getting this fight that I get here. And it is by far one of the craziest fights you can get. So the seed for this fight is either B6, it's B2, B6, B7, or B8. So we start off the fight with weak point. Fox gets hit with a 0 roll, which puts us, I think, to one of 25 fights that you can get with Fox getting 0 damage. And then Fox does 98, which immediately knocks it down to one of those 4. Immediately. So you'll see a lot of things done in really random order. So you'll see Harry heal both of the first 2 turns that we get to attack. You'll learn that this crit doesn't matter. While it's nice, it doesn't matter at all, actually. It still takes the same number of turns. If he got the crit this turn, it takes off a turn. But he didn't get it that turn, so it didn't matter. So you'll see that I do a run from that turn, and I'll attack here. And that makes no sense whatsoever. And I'll run this turn. So, none of that makes any sense to a casual runner, to anything, to a normal player, to a casual runner, to a high-level runner. That is the fastest possible fight that you can get if you know the inputs, if you understand the RNG. And just like that, the run is over. Now, of course, I stopped my timer after I kill Basilisk. Technically, time would end after you get done with all this dialogue, but I don't do that because it's just not what I do. I'm just keeping the same method. The final time for this, for my timing, was what, 1:13:40, so it'd be like a 1:15, like 20-ish, I think. 1:15:30-ish, something like that, if I stopped it after the final dialogue box, because technically the in-game time keeps going despite beating the Basilisk. And there goes down one of the most insane runs that you'll see of Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets for the Game Boy Color. Like I said in the beginning of the run, it is possible to be beaten. You will not see me doing that. I refuse to, unless something else is found. If there is a way to sequence break by glitching, I might do it. But until then, when I do runs of this game, I'm going to be sticking to no enemy attack skip, which makes the run 1,000 times more difficult. And if you think this is bad, the final 3 are way, way, way worse. And there we go. The video's about to run out, so I'll have to pause. I'll pause at the in-game time screen. And there you go, 1:13:11. And that's your run. That is the world record time for today. Pretty crazy run. I'm pretty happy with